Hey, Stoney here. I'm here with Clint Leetwood, and this is Mechabellum Tournament. At the bottom here, we have Alpha playing as a fortified specialist, and he's up against Apooche playing as a speed specialist. This is, I think this is game 5 of the weekend tournament, so we're getting very close to the end here. And this is an extremely high MMR game. I think both of these players are above 2000 MMR. So just looking at the board here, how do you feel about the first round, Clint?
Yeah, I hate playing against this ball push, so I'm going to say Apooche has a very strong, a repertoire and just like fundamental understanding of the game, right? And I think this is going to prove to be very difficult to deal with, right? I think there's some very natural development into things like Wraith, and it's going to be very hard for one, I think Alpha to answer that with what's currently on the board, and two, it's just like once it's online, and if God forbid these balls get any amount of levels at any point, it gets really difficult to shut it down or slow it down. What about you, though? How do you feel? Obviously, we see the first round going very much in favor of Alpha, but I think that's kind of to be expected.
Hmm. I think Alpha is starting this round very strong. I mean, he knows that there's not going to be any sort of chaff clear, and he capitalized on it. Now, speaking of chaff clear, we are seeing a couple interesting cards. I think Fire Badgers could be very good for Apooche, and so can the Mustangs. Ball Stance is a very traditional meta build, and with
True.
level 2 Mustang coming in here, I think that could be very useful. So Apooche is going to go with the Mustangs. And how do you feel about Alpha's unit pick?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was leaning into the idea of either Fire Badger or Mustang for Alpha as well. Um, I think at the end of the day, right, outside of the natural development of Wraith and into this sort of comp idea, is this also very natural development into Replicate. And we want to try to be ahead of that. So when the Replicate turn does come, it doesn't just kill us or put us so far behind that, um, you know, that we can't catch up and we're the game is closed out. But yeah, I think Mustang or Fire Badger was the correct pickup from Alpha.
Mm-hmm. One thing I want to point out is the Mustang position on Apooche's board is very stylistic. I mean, usually when you go Mustang ball, you have the Mustangs very close to the ball. But right now, those Mustangs are they're covering both ends because the ones that are in line with the tower could actually turn around and start covering the flank, whereas the rest of the Mustangs will go forward. And I think that is intentional, by the way. He's just trying to use that unit for multiple purposes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, typically, right, what you see is this idea of the Mustangs behind the balls, and as the balls push forward, the Mustangs stop and clear out any chaff in front of the steel balls, and then the steel balls, do their job on the single target. But I think the other reality, right, is that Apooche knows that his board is vulnerable to missiles, and while it's kind of rare to see missile play at this high of MMR, it's not something you should always disrespect, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, I can drop a 50 cost missile and kill 400 supply. Yeah, I'm going to do it every time, buddy. I'm going to make you respect that. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
All right. So far, I feel like Alpha is just half a step ahead of Apooche. He
Mm-hmm.
really needs to get these balls leveled. We got one set of balls on the left hand side is already level. On the other hand side, not so much. Now, speaking of
Mm-hmm.
cars, both picked laser sight, but ER Vulcan was actually offered. And I was wondering if Alpha could have benefited more from ER Vulcan because remember, ER Vulcan with scores should be able to bring down the steel balls fairly quickly, thus preventing them
True.
from ever leveling up. And without the steel balls, all there's left for Apooche are Mustangs and Crawlers, which they don't stand a chance against ER Vulcans.
Very true. I wonder if that was like a meta read on the idea that if we do go ER Vulcan round 3 and we do slap down a Vulcan, that limits us to only one deployment this round. I feel like whenever I watch these higher MMR games, they very, very, very rarely skip a deployment. And typically, right, you'll see mass recruitment even clicked early on pretty regularly. So Yeah, I wonder if that was like sort of the read on what's going on here. But I
Hmm.
mean, the alternative, right, is that like the Vulcan card could have been just picked up, sat on, and just like make Apooche respect it.
Another thing that's very interesting is that Apooche never leveled the balls on the left, even though it
I
was
noticed
ready
that
to
too.
level. So I wonder if that's a
Yeah.
mistake because I mean, I think he just wanted to get the units out on the on the right flank very quickly. But I wonder if that was a mistake because if he would have leveled those balls, they could have won that side with double the
Mhm.
HP.
Yeah, I agree. I wonder if the shallow flank was a bit of a mistake. But round four top supply spec coming out. Alpha windmill slams it, and I completely agree. If you're at max health at round four, we can sack a couple rounds and let our comp start to really scale, right?
Hmm.
Um, I wonder if Apooche is forced to match. Um,
No, he picked up fortified hackers. That's a very interesting choice. If anything, I would have expected Alpha to pick up any sort of hacker card, seeing how you're against steel balls coming right at you. But with Apooche, when he's dealing with a chaff heavy board, he's picking 4 to 5 hackers. Now, keep in mind though, 4 to 5 hackers are essentially a whole different unit, right? They
True.
start with 19,000 HP. They can walk up to somebody and just punch them with their tentacles. They don't even need to hack them anymore. They essentially are just a brawler at this point. I wonder if that's what the real intention is, just to add a bit of meat in front, tanking these shots from the tarantulas, allowing the ball stands to do work, clearing the chaff, and then eventually getting the balls to level. So this is more of a transitional unit. He's never going to use the fortified hackers to win the game. He just wants them to tank. And what do you
I
think?
think I think it's partly that, but I think it's also like a hard read on this idea of preventing alpha from going mines. Hackers do exceptionally well into spider mines, right? They
Hmm.
hack one spider mine, that spider mine runs into the other spider mine, blows it up. But here we kind of see what's happening, right? These hackers, once they hack one of these spiders, the HP pool is a little difficult to deal with. And this has been kind of
Yeah.
the bane of my existence recently by spamming spiders on ladders. Someone will just pick up a couple hackers, click range, and I'm like, well, there goes my whole squad. Energy shield device specialist coming out. I think that's probably something Alpha might want to consider here, honestly, even though Nano's in the pack.
Hmm. Well, it looks like they're both going nano, and I agree with you. After seeing how the last round played out, I feel like there's a real place for these hackers right now. Not for real hacking, the tarantulas or whatnot, but just to get rid of those mines because steel balls are extremely vulnerable to spider mines, especially after they already
Absolutely.
lock on to a unit.
Absolutely.
And I was not expecting such a huge swing on the last round. That came out of the left field for me.
Yeah, it's kind of the reality of once you pick top supply spec, you're kind of conceding the round. And that's okay. The goal being that while you might concede this round and potentially even the next round, you get to scale, and it really starts to come online by round three of having that. So round seven is when alpha I think should be fully online and probably developing some pretty powerful stuff on his board.
Mm-hmm. Right now, Alpha is gonna have to face with the ever leveling steel balls. I don't think these steel balls are going to die this turn, which means they are going to get another level, and level 3 steel balls. At that point, the break point becomes very difficult to manage because your fortress can no longer one-shot these steel balls, right? Your scorpions can no longer one-shot these steel balls,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have to worry about what if they get range, what if they get suck, right? So
Mm-hmm.
becomes very tricky to deal with.
Oh man, and you can just see the beautiful synergy that exists between both steel balls and hackers here in full display. The steel balls ramp up their damage, and so does the hacker. And once those two bars meet, boom, that unit is now mine.
Wow, this is a very potent move. Now, we do have melting point being offered. Multi-melter is always an option. And they
Interesting.
get picked by Alpha, so it's going to be Alpha with the melter. How much money does he have? He has 1150, which should give him enough money to go with multi-melter with range. But instead, he's going to chop up first with this turn. Melting point also gets picked by Apooche.
Whoa, and replicate.
Mass replicate on all the crawlers.
This round could go very, very bad for Apooche.
I don't know yet because of the hacker. I mean, yes, they don't have range, but it's going to come into range. And looking at the last couple rounds, I feel like Alpha had a bit of a chaff clear problem. Not that Alpha doesn't have units that can clear chaff, it's that his units get stuck on the steel balls with armor, which leaves all the crawlers. And Apooche's got what, 1, 2, 3, 4 crawlers if you're counting the 2 more that's covering the flank right now, 6 crawlers. All of those crawlers are just gonna walk right in because of Alpha's units being distracted on the steel balls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's difficult, right? It seems a little unconventional, but this idea of replicate actually goes really well into hackers, because as one of your crawlers gets taken over, well, the other crawlers kill it, and you get that crawler right back. So, but this very, very heads-up play from Apooche with this hacker just zooming in down the middle.
Ooh, now that's...
Oh, and we're on the melter.
Yeah, on the melter. They're going to get the melter, and the melter's going to turn around and start hitting the tower. Wow, this is disastrous for Alpha this turn. Every time I see steel balls coming running at me like this, I would just get oil.
Yeah. I'm surprised, right? Usually you expect to see oil by round 3 if you're playing against like an aggressive player. But I mean, Alpha manages to eke it out, and I think this is the part where Alpha's comp should be kind of online. I do like this idea of
round 7
of yeah, true. I do like this idea of Tarantula Melter. I've been playing around with it. I think it's pretty damn strong. How about you? Have you messed around with this comp idea?
Tarantula Melter, yes. I was going to say with the card drop, I wouldn't mind taking Skill Specialist and just hit oil. Because with Skill Specialist with oil, essentially guarantees oil on your side of the board forever. The shield spec, it's okay. You get a shield bubble, but you're running into steel balls, so it doesn't really matter. But anyways, back to your question. Tarantula Melter. Tarantula Melter, I mean, it's almost like Arclight Melter, right? You get units that's heavy on the front lines that do a lot of damage, that can tank a lot of damage. What I like about Tarantula Melters, especially if you have like a 3-to-1 ratio of Tarantula to Melter, is that you can always hit that Spider-Man button later on. Spider-Man, great chaff clear, like Tarantula is one of those units is like a chaff clear and chaff all in one. Like they do both roles really well. And the tech also helps that, right? Spider-Man, they're great chaff clear, but they're also great chaff on their own.
True.
Right.
It's the same time when crawler production is good on a melter, right? It's the same principle here, right? We have this unit that is making infinite chaff. It is very obnoxious to deal with, and can potentially kill you.
For sure. And here goes the oil. Yeah, if you're gonna use oil, you should have gotten skill spec because you need that oil like almost indefinitely on this side. Now that these steel balls are level 3, you're gonna have a heck of a difficult time getting through them. And looking at these steel balls, they are gonna lock onto the melting point, which means the melting point is not gonna be able to bring down the steel balls, and that is just such bad news for Alpha.
And getting on the tower too.
Yeah. Yeah, everything's
It's
getting
a disaster.
destroyed. Yeah. How are we looking at HP here? Alpha can probably still tank for one more round, but just based on how one-sided this round went, I wonder what can Alpha really do to stop his inevitable demise.
Oh my goodness, almost dead. And that was with oil up.
Yeah.
That's rough. I think something that was missed that was like very keen and very smart from Apooche, right? Because he went, oh, you went replicate? Okay. Impact drill. And replicate. Which means, like, at the end of the day, right? Crawlers that go impact drill and replicate into just replicate crawlers, those impact drill replicate crawlers win every time. One of those, like, kind of rules, like, if your opponent's doing this kind of flanky stuff on the rights and lefts, you can answer with a replicate and impact drill, and there's not a whole lot left. In Alpha, triple Texas crawlers, he goes mech rage and impact drill, so he is out of money. How do you feel about mech rage here? I think it's kind of a waste of tech, personally.
I don't know. I kind of like it. So I like it for two reasons. Reason number one, the reason that the melting point for Alpha were targeted so early on last game is because the tarantulas weren't able to clear out the crawlers on Apooche side. Right? If you look at both corners and if you count the number of crawlers that's coming from Apooche and the number of crawlers that are coming to defend, Apooche has more. So with triple tech, he could even up the playing field right there and then. Because honestly, Apooche doesn't have a whole lot of chaff there. He's got what, a couple, one arc light on each side, and Mustangs, right? And then the reason number two is that Alpha could really use a tower. I mean, it's difficult, but he should really try. If he can get tower, at the very least, tie up these Mustangs at the very bottom. He should be able to get ahead. So as you can see here, the power of that triple tech crawlers is just tying up all the steel balls, and now the steel balls are getting picked off. Now, too bad though, on the left hand side, the steel balls are still coming through. And that's gonna be very rough. That's gonna be very rough because that just means the tower's gonna get down before the melting point gets killed. Yeah, that's very rough.
And this level 3 boat, goes down
that's
too.
Super rough. Yeah,
it's game.
It's game. It's like a split second. If that melting point on the right hand side was killed, he might have had a chance because he would end up with a melting point and a level 3 boat. But it was killed. The tower was killed before it was dead. So yeah, that was game. Well, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I got another one that's even better. Check it out, and I'll see you on the next one.
Prepare your tactics. Mechabellum's calling. Deploy your fortress. The battlefield's alive with swarms.